What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining us again for another edition of the Streamline Podcast. I'm your host, Narik Chase, and in this video, we're going to be discussing the MCU's Ant-Man film series. Let's get it. If you like what we do here, please join us every Friday for a video of the Streamline Podcast, where we cover interesting ideas, topics, opinions, and weekly news. In the wake of the success of the MCU, not currently though, we've got film series for prominent characters in Marvel Comics, as well as some of the more obscure characters, thus Ant-Man's rise to the forefront. Now, a brief history of the character. Ant-Man was created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby, making his first appearance in Tales to Astonish issue 27 in 1962. Although there have been several superheroes to take up the mantle of Ant-Man, the original is the scientist Hank Pym, who was the creator of the Pym particles, a substance that allowed him to change the size of objects and people. Pym was also a founding member of the Avengers. Ant-Man made his film debut in 2015 Ant-Man film, which featured both Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas, and Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd. And in this video, we are going to dive into the Ant-Man film franchise. Yes, Ant-Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Coming in at number 10 is Jentorra, played by Katie O'Brien, who was introduced in the third film. I like characters like her. She is the leader of this resistance against Kang the Conqueror, who has conquered this area of the Quantumverse, the quantum realm, actually. She's strong, she's passionate, she's a very interesting character, she looks good as hell, and she's pretty badass. And I really like characters like that. I will say, unfortunately, the film doesn't really give her a lot to do, nor does it really dive much into her backstory and or motivations outside of pretty much just being a rebel leader. Coming in at number 9, Bill Foster, played by Lawrence Fishburne. Bill Foster is a character that was actually an associate of Hank Pym and helped develop the idea of working to discover the quantum realm. He's actually a pretty cool character, and yes, there is an animosity between the two characters, but the man is actually pretty humble, he's pretty interesting, he's pretty cool, and you see how loyal he is, especially given his loyalty to the character of Abel Starr. Definitely would like to see more from that character in the future. Coming in at number 8 is Sonny Birch, played by Walter Goggins. Now, Sonny Birch is a black market dealer, and the reason why I like his character so much is not because he's money hungry. I like it because he actually is an outside party that's not a superpowered being that's actually trying to cash in on what's going on. Similar to, Michael Keaton's Vulture, who ended up taking the technology from the Chitauri and cashing in on it. I feel like Walter Goggins' character actually has like a similar goal. Yes, it's money and everything, but it's just, I like him. He's kind of a sleazy guy, and it's interesting to see a character like that in the MCU. Just a guy just want money and everything, who isn't super powered, who isn't like bent on world destruction or revenge or anything. He's just a pretty basic dude, what you would consider a black market dealer. I like coming in number 7, Louise, played by Michael Pena. And the reason why I like Louise's character, because he is a very cool guy to his core. He's likable, he's loyal, and definitely the humor there. Like his relationship that he has with Scott and how far he's willing to go. I think his character It's pretty grounded with the humor. Yes, he has some moments here and there, but I actually like the fact that he isn't really over the top. Uh, Pretty much, which I don't like the other two characters that T.I. and the other guy played. But T.I.'s character and another guy, don't really like them. But I do like Luigi's character, and I wish he could have had a role in the third film. Coming in at number 6, Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas. Now, I like Hank Pym's character. He's kind of this a grungy old man. He's really, really smart. He's really, really compassionate, and you do see where he's coming from, both in terms of being just a scientist and being like a family man. And I've never really given a care about the character of Hank Pym, but he's actually grown on him due to Michael Douglas's performance of the character. I actually like it. Coming in, number 5, Darren Cross, Yellow Jacket, played by Corey Stoll. Now, I like this because similar to Sonny Birch character, he is a guy and it's basically greed. He's kind of like whatever the guy was, Obadiah Stane was to Iron Man, and Darren Cross is kind of like that to Hank Pym. I like his ambition. He is a smart guy, but he's really ambitious. And then the Yellow Jacket outfit looks absolutely badass. And I really wish this character actually would have had more to contribute to the MCU outside of the freak show that he is in the third film. Coming in, number 4, Ava Star Ghost, played by Hannah John Kamen. Now, the reason why I like this character, I like the character for several reasons. One, she has a very interesting backstory. You do feel sorry for the character. She's actually an interesting character. You want the character to actually fulfill her goals because it's not revenge based. It isn't like she's wanting to kill people. It's not about destruction. It's actually a really legit reason why she's doing what she's doing. Another reason is her abilities are actually really, really cool. Being able to phase and how it's utilized throughout the film throughout combat, transportation. It looks really, really cool. And then thirdly, she's just fire. She's just absolutely gorgeous. Coming in, number 3, Kang the Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors. I don't know much about Kang the Conqueror outside of just one comic that I've read, and it was actually pretty interesting. But in actuality, I didn't really like the version of it I seen in Loki. But this movie made him really badass. It made him very intimidating. It made him very threatening. He was actually very badass. The character was just straight up freaking awesome. Stupid in that MCU villain a way where he's all powerful, but it just this stupidness surrounding what he's doing and how he gets taken down. But the character's actually freaking badass. In fact, this version of the character is probably one of my top 10 favorite villains of the MCU because of how interesting he was and how badass he was. So this is again an interpretation or adaptation of a character that I didn't like in the comics that actually made me interested in the character. Coming in, number 2, Hope Van Dyne, Wasp, played by Evangeline Lilly. Now, that's not saying that. Now, not just the fact that I'm a fan of the actress. I think she is freaking phenomenal as the character. She's awesome. The issue I had with the first film was the fact that we didn't get to see her in a Wasp suit in the first film, but the second film definitely made up for it. Showed that she's exceptionally badass. She's exceptionally skilled. And again, Wasp is one of those characters I didn't really care about. I didn't really think she was interesting, but this actress did a fantastic job not only making me like the character, even though it's a different interpretation of the character and not a direct copy of the character from the comics, but she was actually pretty interesting, badass, looks exceptionally good. And I just like the dynamic that she has with Scott, being kind of the more serious, but not too serious. It kind of reminds me of the relationship between Star-Lord and Gamora. Well, she's kind of like the Gamora type, and she's actually pretty badass. And she's probably one of the female superheroes in the MCU that isn't like cringeworthy to me. So, anyways, I actually like her character, and I think she contributes a lot to the Ant-Man franchise without overshadowing Ant-Man, of course. And of course, number one, Scott Lang, Ant-Man, played by Paul Rudd. Now, Paul Rudd is one of my, he's up there in my favorite actors list. I really like the man. I've enjoyed his work over the years, and I like seeing him play this character. It feels very natural for him to play this role. And again, Ant-Man, along with majority of these characters on this list, is a character in the comics that was very obscure that I really didn't care about. And he made him interesting. He made him likable. Not only was his personality and the performance actually really good, and the story around the character, but also just the way the technology works, his powers, his abilities, the way the suit looks, everything about this character just stepped out to me. Is he as prominent as characters like maybe Iron Man, Thor, Captain America? Probably not. But he's definitely on. He might be a tier below him, but he's still very interesting to me. He's more interesting to me in the way it's been presented in the MCU than like Doctor Strange is. And I know a lot of people like Doctor Strange, but I actually liked Scott Lang in this film. Thought it was a pretty cool character. So Ant-Man, number one favorite character from the Ant-Man film series. Now these are just my top 10. There are some other characters I thought was actually pretty cool. But again, 10, so we had to go ahead and crunch that down. So in the comments below, let me know what your top 10 are. Next topic. Alright, we're going to continue the episode with the top 10 best moments of the Ant-Man film franchise. Now, when I say the top 10 best moments from the now, we're going to continue this off with the top 10 best moments. Now, we are only talking about the 3 films, not any of the other appearances of the characters in the MCU, but specifically the 3 films. Let's go ahead and get it. Now, coming in at number 10, the Ant-Man versus Falcon fight that was featured in the first Ant-Man film. It was a very fun fight. It was actually pretty cool, utilizing the abilities of both characters. And again, I always have to say that the presentation of Ant-Man in the MCU done spectacularly, and the combat is awesome. And it was nice seeing these two go back and forth, especially Falcon, because I haven't really seen him go toe-to-toe really with anybody like that. So it was pretty cool seeing the character do something, and they just have this really tete-a-tete on screen. One of the best fights of the MCU, in my opinion. Coming in at number 9, the San Francisco street chase, featured in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I don't care what nobody says, that freaking street chase was awesome. We get to see these characters take on the bad guys in different creative ways, whether it's them utilizing the Pym particle technology to attack them, or them engaging with them in combination with it. There's interesting fights. The setup looks really cool. The malfunctioning aspect of Ant-Man's suit features some pretty comedic and pretty interesting and cool scenes with car shrinking. They're using that in the combat and the transverse and all of that. It's just overall is one of the best chases in the MCU. Maybe not as memorable as the Captain America Panther chase, but it's definitely up there. Now, coming in at number 8, the Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket briefcase fight. Look, Ant-Man fights are awesome, especially when they utilize the shrinkage, and which going into this world where all of these everyday objects are used as basically a battlefield for these miniaturized characters. And definitely just visually, it just looks really, really good. The presentation, how chaotic it is, definitely very, very memorable scene. Coming in at number 6. I think I said it's a 10, 9, 8, 7. I'm sorry. Coming in at number 7, Scott meets Kang, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Now, say what you want about that film. Kang definitely made an impression, and the very conversation that he has with Scott initially comes off as very sincere. But then you get, but then the dialogue and the conversation go into an area where we see that Kang isn't a good guy, and he is willing to do whatever it takes, manipulate whoever it takes, strong arm anybody it takes to get what he wants, and it's very menacing. And you have to give that up to Jonathan Majors, because he definitely sold the character, and that scene was actually pretty cool. And I love seeing superheroes dealing with that interesting kind of dilemma. Although I don't really like Cassie's character in the film, I understand that at the emotional core, as a father, he does not want his daughter to be in that position. So I thought the conversation itself was actually really good, but just the bit of a threat at the end of it was pretty much icing on the cake for me. Coming in at number 6, Scott's first shrink. This again is one of the times where it just visually looks really good. The way it's presented, the way it looks, kind of the comedic value behind it was actually really, really good. We see Scott's just stolen the Ant-Man suit, and he ends up hiding in the bathroom, shrinks in the tub. The tub looks completely massive. The way the water in the tub ends up watching looks pretty cool when he's falling in between the gaps of the wood and stuff in the apartment or wherever the hell it is. Then there was the moment with him going through the window, the giant rat. The rat was actually pretty adorable, but I wouldn't want to get ate by it. But that whole scene was a great introduction to what Ant-Man is, and what we were expecting or weren't expecting, but we're going to see in the Ant-Man franchise. And it was a pretty cool shot. It was actually really good the way it was set up, the way it was shot. 2 thumbs up. Coming in at number 5. Now this Ant-Man doesn't get too many. Ant-Man does like really cool stuff, but there's not a lot of moments in the MCU, or pretty much for his franchise really, where he gets moments like he's straight up badass. But this definitely is one of the moments like, oh yes, Ant-Man is freaking badass. Even though in Endgame, when you see him, at the end battle, that was pretty badass too. That was like, yeah, he's badass. But in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, we get to see Ant-Man marching on Kang's stronghold, and him just absolute giant coming in like a badass to save his daughter's life was actually pretty freaking awesome. And definitely I gotta give it to him. He's sitting here swatting the buildings and stuff. He's sitting here trying to defend it, taking all of these energy blasts to get to her. He's trying to stop Kang from leaving. It's just ultimately a very memorable and unique scene, and it definitely is one of his better moments, if not one of the best moments. Coming in at number 4, the Wasp versus Ghost fight in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I love fight sequences, and I will admit I wish we did have more fights between like female characters in comic book films. There ain't a lot. One of the best ones that I've seen out the top of my head was the Black Widow versus her sister in the Black Widow film. Like, that fight was hands down one of the best ones, like in movies, because it was so brutal. And this fight isn't as brutal, but it looks really cool because you get to see again Ghost using her phasing abilities mixed with a Wasp using her shrinking abilities, and the scene itself looks really, really cool. And that's one thing I love about superhero films, is when we see fights like this, them utilizing their powers, their technology, their skills in the fights. It creates a very diverse and very unorthodox fight sequences that are really, really cool. So I really appreciated that scene. Not to mention it helps make Wasp out to be pretty badass. Coming in at number 3, Hank and Janet are reunited, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, in the first Ant-Man film, Hank ends up telling, Hope and Scott that his wife didn't die. She ended up shrinking to stop a missile, and she got lost in the quantum realm, which is a theory he had, but he didn't really express like that. But in the second film, one of the storylines is him going to rescue her after she links up through Scott with a quantum line or tether or whatever. So he gets verification that she's alive. Basically, Ant-Man and the Wasp is them trying to get her from the quantum realm. And it's, it's very emotional because she's been gone for like 30 years, and Hope has not seen her mom, not 30 years, but it's been quite a while. Hope was a young girl when her mom disappeared, I believe, and yeah, she was really, really young. And it's nice seeing characters who haven't seen each other that long come together, and you see that this man has all his brilliance and stuff, and he put himself into his brilliance because heartache and stuff, because he ain't seen his, he thought he lost his wife. So it was nice seeing her character come back, and just a good for the story and for Hank Pym. And plus, what is an Ant-Man story without Hank and Janet? Now, I do realize there's some interpretations of Hank come off a bit of a douchebag and very abusive to Janet, but we don't get that in the MCU, and 2 thumbs up for that. So that's what I'm talking about. Coming in at number 2, Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket, the toy fight, presented in the first Ant-Man film. Great. We already saw the briefcase fight. It was actually pretty cool. What makes this fight, again, the scope of it looks really, really cool. The fight itself is really, really cool. And then using the toys as the battleground was actually pretty cool. And of course, the funniest bit was with the Thomas the Tank Engine scene. It was actually pretty freaking funny, and I really, really enjoyed it. Just ultimately, and then another thing is the stakes. It isn't like worldwide stakes in the film, but Scott's trying to save his daughter while he's battling Yellow Jacket in his room. Ultimately, just like I said, just great. Visually, it looks really cool, and the fight itself is actually really, really cool. Now, coming in, maybe not number 1, is the Army of Ants scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Now, the reason why I like this, and for those who don't know, what the hell is the Army of Ants scene? During the end battle, after Kang's kicking everybody's butt, an Army of Ants show up. And the reason why I like this is because when you think of Ant-Man, you think about ants, it's like, what the hell can ants do? This is the scene where it's like, okay, ants came in and it was pretty cool, you know what I'm saying? Army of ants just overran. It's like, imagine Ant-Man if ants were giants. This is what he could, and with the technology that he's capable of and how advanced the ants were, what if Ant-Man created giant ants? He could actually create ants that could do this exact same thing and be like a real threat, So that's the scope of it that I like. The fact that the ants just seemed like they were just a real threat in that moment. It was actually pretty cool. It looked pretty cool. Ridiculous, of course. Stupid, yes. It didn't really make any sense. The fact that the ants were even in the movie don't make any sense. But I just thought it looked really cool because this is Ant-Man, and they turned the concept of ants into like a major threat, and it took them going to the quantum realm to do that. And I was like, that's okay, pretty cool. Like, would there be a comic book adaptation of Ant-Man controlling like a kingdom of ants or something? Would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? If the ants could do stuff like that in the way it was presented. But that's just me. So guys, top 10 best moments in Ant-Man film franchise. Comment section below, let us know. Alright guys, we're going to take a short break. Hope you enjoyed the music, and we'll catch you in a few minutes. They think the wasteland seen monsters? Oh hell no, they ain't seen a monster yet. We about to see what happens when the Raiders reign. I'm psycho, I'm having a blast. The killer in me, raid until the last. When things get rough, take no one alive. My finger on the trigger helps me to survive. Born and raised post-apocalyptic hood, taking people's shit just feels so good. Savage blood runs through my veins. This is how the Raiders reign. Death comes when the bullet leaves the chamber, bringing them the pain, eliminate the danger. Feeling blood rain, the world grows more stranger. Battle so hard, call me Pokemon trainer, or call me the master, I intend to bring disaster. I need more turbo to make my moves faster. I'm a bastard, my mom and dad's plaster. I run the shit like I'm in the pit, like a masher. I'm hazardous to these caravan merchants. I'm kidnapping, there's no need to keep searching. Deceive you, the Tower Tom dead red. Neglect to tell her that her sis was fucking dead. It's open season and I'm on a killing spree. Me against the world with all these casualties. Enjoy your last meal because mine is evergreen. I'm a thug in the streets, I'ma bring the heat. Gotta turn this combat zone into a nightclub. Then I turn that shit back into a fight club. Got some caps, yeah, I'm gonna snatch that. Scrap raps, think they kill me, better scrap that. Staying low key with the Kims in the stash bag. Blowing up like Thorpe, operated like Max Black. I'm talking shit, everyone wears a gas mask. Trash that, in the iron words the way I slap slag. Like eulogy, the way I run a slave trade. Paved the way like Con Steel, Kim's that drain braids. I'm a survivor, strike quick like a viper. As deadly Jericho with the sniper rifle. Creep through these black waters and I torture. When I nuke a world, there be no time report ya. I run this pack like we're wild dogs violent. I'ma run this pack like we're child claws violent. Hound psycho, I'm having a blast. The killer in me, raid into the last. When things get rough, take no one alive. My finger on the trigger helps me to survive. Born and raised post-apocalyptic hood. Taking people's shit just feels so good. Savage blood runs through my veins. This is how the raiders reign. All right, guys, we are back. And we're going to shift things up. Instead of us jumping to the top 10s, we're going to go into rankings. And we got a couple of interesting topics when it comes to ranking. First, we're going to rank the Ant-Man film fights. Again, these are specifically for the films, the Ant-Man films, and not any of the MCU films. So, and this one can consist of, Ant-Man, Wasp, long as it's within the context of those films. So, ranking, really, I'll only count pretty much 6 fights, like actual fights, not including like henchmen or anything, but just typically fights between like the bad guys. So let's go ahead. Now, coming in our 6 fights, the number 6 would be the Wasp versus Ghost fighting Ant-Man and the Wasp. Again, I really like seeing these two females duke it out, utilizing their powers. I just wish it could have been a little bit longer, and I wish that Scott could have got in on the action, because he makes one little thing in it, but it doesn't really have like an actual like 2-on-1 fight, which would have made it even better. Coming in at number 5, the next fight would be Ant-Man versus Falcon. Again, I thought it was really cool. These two characters utilizing their abilities and the technologies that they have to go at it. And like I said, Falcon doesn't really get fights like that. So it was actually pretty cool seeing him do that. Next up, coming in at number 4, Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket briefcase fight. Really cool. Just visually, the spectacle of it, just this world that's within this miniature world within the briefcase, just the way it was just stylized, directed, and edited, just made for a very cool and unique experience in terms of fight sequences. And like I said, outside of Ant-Man, you don't really get fight sequences like that. Coming in at number 3, the Ant-Man family, the Langs, I guess, versus Kang, the Conqueror, Ant-Man, and the Wasp, Quantumania. Now, I like this because not only, and again, I like seeing superpowered people fight superpowered people, and it was cool because you get to see how the Langs, Cassie, Scott, and Hope end up utilizing the combat and the technology to take on Kang. The Kang character shows how advanced his technology is able to throw it thwart them, not only through just his technology and how advanced it is, but actually his combat. So we get to see them, all three of them, jumping him, and he's just holding his own and actually beating them. They're shrinking, trying to fight him. He's able to stick with them. They're expanding, trying to fight him. He's able to stick with them. And it's just a really cool exchange. A little too brief. I wish it would have just wish it would have came out, continue on for maybe two more minutes. It was actually pretty cool and one of the best moments in the third film. Coming in number 2 is the Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket toy fight. Again, just the scope of it, just the stakes that were involved, just overall the escalation of it throughout the film, and what ultimately the final battle is, and just again how fun it was, and just like the interesting idea of the toys setting as the battleground. And again, I got to reference that Thomas the Tank Engine scene was just completely hilarious. It's just ultimately a very fun fight. And coming in at number 1, the best fight would be the Ant-Man versus Kang the Conqueror fight, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Now I know I had said that the Langs ended up fighting Kang, but there is a scene after they pretty much almost win the day and everything. There is pretty much a hand-to-hand fight between Ant-Man and Kang, and this is one of the most brutal, if not the most brutal, fights in the entire MCU. Kang is literally just whooping Scott's butt. He is just owning this dude. He's beating him down. It's the fight where it was so cool that even when you watch the fight, you can actually feel the impact of his blows, because Kang is not only a master of technology, he was extremely intelligent. The man knows how to throw down, and he does not hold back when he's fighting Scott. And yes, Scott does manage to get some blows in here or there, but ultimately he would have lost had not Wasp came in and helped him. But it was honestly a brutal fight. It was definitely one of the most brutal fights that I've seen in the MCU, and definitely in the and then what makes it special is they weren't using their powers. It was literally just hand to hand combat. That fight is what makes it so unique, which makes it number 1 compared to the rest of the fights. Is it was just these two characters who didn't use technology. It was just them duking it out, and it was really badass. So, ranking the Ant-Man films, the Ant-Man film fights, it would be Wasp versus Ghost is number 6. Which I'm not saying they're best to worst or anything like that, because I like all the fights, but just in terms of getting the entertainment value and just a depth to the story and all of that. So coming in number 6, Wasp versus Ghost. 5, Ant-Man versus Falcon. 4, Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket, the briefcase fight. 3, Ant-Man family versus Kang the Conqueror. 2, Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket toy fight. And number 1, Ant-Man versus Kang the Conqueror. So in your ratings, guys, let me know what did you rate the Ant-Man film fights. Yes, there is I guess you could say the Cassie versus MODOK, but I didn't like MODOK that much. I didn't even want to talk about it. And kind of Cassie too. So anyway, just let me know how you would rank them, and what would you rank as your best fight. Or if you want to do the best to worst fights, I guess you could say the MODOK fight with Cassie was the worst, but I don't really consider it a fight because she pretty much ran the entire freaking time. So next topic. Alright, again, continuing on with ranking. So but this time we're going to rank the Ant-Man movie villains. I'm not talking about henchmen, but just overall the main antagonists of the films. From what I've seen is mainly 5, even though 1 I wouldn't really say is I mean, she is, but yeah. So anyways, coming in from best to worst being MODOK, Darren Cross, played by Corey Stoll, in Ant-Man 3. For some reason, I want to say Aquaman, but Ant-Man 3. MODOK just MODOK is just an ugly looking character, and it's hard to just. I mean, the MODOK from the television show was freaking awesome. Outside of that, I've never liked the character, but the television show, if you ain't seen it, watch it. That show is freaking hilarious. But I just didn't like MODOK. I didn't like the story. I didn't like the way he looked. I didn't like really pretty much anything about the character in the film. He didn't have. Yes, there's this. And what I've even heard is that they even retconned a part of what happened to Ant-Man in the first Ant-Man film in the end fight to make this character. Just ultimately, I don't understand why MODOK was even in this freaking movie. If they would have said MODOK in a Hydra spy film for like, if MODOK was like in the Black Widow film as like a villain or something like that, or as in Iron Man, a new Iron Man film or something like that, I would understand. But in this film, it was a wasted character. It didn't make any sense. It just looked stupid, and just the whole story behind it just looked pretty. It was just dumb. So this is probably one of the worst interpretations of villains in the MCU, actually. So the worst definitely is MODOK. Now, coming in at number 4, Sonny Burch. Now, I do like Sonny Burch, played by Walter Goggins, who always plays douchebags perfectly. I liked him because, again, I don't think he's the worst. I think he, in terms of like maybe like depth, he doesn't really have much depth outside of making money. But I like seeing characters like that in a superhero film, because normally it's always about global, like revenge or global domination or mass genocide. And with all of the MCU villains that we've seen, he seems pretty grounded. I mean, and people would understand, money. I mean, yeah, and he's basically what greedy humans would be, and I like that. I liked him for that. I actually would have liked to see more of his character. If you go into black market terms of like, okay, Sonny Burch versus Claw, I actually like Sonny Burch because he has a better personality, but Claw pretty much like the same thing. But anyways, I do like his character. MODOK still is the worst. Coming in at number 3, Darren Cross, Yellow Jacket, played by Corey Stoll. I actually liked him. I like the mentor protege story aspect of it. I like him. He's pretty threatening. Again, he does remind me of Obadiah to Iron Man. The Yellow Jacket suit is actually pretty cool. He's like the business villain, and it doesn't really have much depth. But I just like him because he's actually pretty cool. Maybe not the most memorable villain in the MCU, but he's actually pretty cool. And basically, like, his representation of like the dark side of like Ant-Man, that's kind of, to me, it's kind of like, okay, he's like the mirror version of a character. If you say you got Superman, you got Zod. If you got Hulk, you got Abomination. Then I would say, okay, you got Ant-Man, you got Yellow Jacket. So that's where I see him as. Still pretty cool villain, but he might not be the deepest. Coming in number 2, of course, I have to give it to Ghost/Ava Starr, played by Hannah John Kamen. Again, she actually had depth. You actually felt for the character when you found out about her origins. Her abilities were actually pretty cool. Had some really cool moments in the sequel. Definitely wish her character would come back in the future film. I liked her motivation. I like the outfit. The outfit looks absolutely badass. And of course, she's just absolutely like sexy as hell. So definitely like her character. And again, she has she's different, she's absolutely different from pretty much any of the other villains that are on this list. So you understand her motivations, and she hasn't really gone too far. I would say that she hasn't gone too far, unlike some of these other villains. And of course, the number 1 bad guy, who I'm going to rank as number 1, Kang the Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors. Again, I didn't like his Loki incarnation. I couldn't take it seriously at all. He's just absolutely badass. When I heard that Kang the Conqueror was going to be the next, you know, villain of the MCU and everything, I was like, who the hell is that? I don't understand why they would go from a titan like Thanos, who, again, one of those characters in the comics I didn't care about until the movies came out. And I was like, okay, this dude's actually pretty badass. Well, Kang was like that too, and after I read the comic, I'm like, okay, he's interesting, but is he top tier, like Marvel villain? And this movie, like his personality, the way he held himself, even though there was a lot of stupid stuff involved with the story and everything, actually made me very interested in seeing what this character can do, how badass he was. It's just that exchange between him and Scott was actually really revealing of the character. Definitely made me interested to see what this character could do for the future of the MCU. So that's where we're ranking the Ant-Man villains. Worst to best. MODOK, worst. Absolute worst. And probably is going to be on the worst MCU villains list as well. In fact, definitely. But the worst to be MODOK, then you got Sonny Burch, then you got Darren Cross, then you got Ava Starr, then of course being the best of the Ant-Man villains, Kang the Conqueror. So, how would you rank these villains in these films? Let me know in the comment section below. Next topic. Now we are on to the final topic of the Ant-Man film franchise, and that is ranking the movies. Now we're going to get into a bit of the backstory. Give us a bit brief information on the films. All right, Peyton Reed directed all three films, and the box office is a bit of a back and forth because the first film I did pretty well. The second film did basically a little bit better, and then the third film did almost as good as the first one, but not quite there. The budget for the first Ant-Man film is $130 to $170 million, and ultimately they came back with over $500 million, so they made a profit. They did pretty good with it. The Ant-Man and Wasp film was almost the same budget, a little bit more. It was $130 to $195 million, and they came back with over $600 million. So they made roughly almost about the same amount, giving the extra money that was put into the film. And the third film, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, budget was $200 million, and they only walked out with $474 million, or up and down. So all these numbers aren't exact. There's a little bit more, there might be a little bit less, but there was a little bit more. So a little bit more on all of them. But so it made less money with more money being put into it. So technically it bombed, but not. Technically it bombed. Usually you have to do more than what you have to do, double and more. Basically, if you triple your money, you actually made a profit and you did pretty good. And it doubled, but there's other things that go into the budget, promotion and stuff like that too, as well as like the movies. But in terms of the films and the story, this is how I'm going to rank it. Now, Ant-Man and coming in at number 3 will be Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now the reason why isn't because I think it's a terrible movie. It's got a lot of questionable decisions in it, and I know that it bombed, and a lot of people say it's one of the worst MCU films. I don't think it's one of the worst MCU films. I think it's a film that definitely had a lot of potential, and that they were leaning too much of the whole multiverse aspect into it, as well as a lot of the woke stuff, Cassie character. Just they tried to do too much in this film. It was, but the writing was pretty bad. There were a lot of sequences where me and my friends were watching this film. We're like, why in the hell did that happen? How did that person get that. Where did all of this come from in this area? Just why this person didn't tell this character about this extremely important event and everything. So there's a lot of questionable decisions. I did get some enjoyment from the action that was in the film. Way too much CGI. And that's saying something for an Ant-Man film where everything is large when the guy shrinks. A lot of CGI, and of course the MODOK, MODOK just being forced into whoever thought that was a good idea. Probably should just, I don't know, slip on a banana peel or something. But Ant-Man and the Wasp as a third film and possibly conclusion of the series, and I do admit, because I heard another YouTuber say this, and I do admit, this doesn't feel like an Ant-Man film. If you look at the Iron Man films, it does feel like there's a story there that stretches throughout the films, although they are connected to the other films as well. It has a sense of growth, like a story. When you look at the Captain America films, there does seem like there's a story, despite them being separated across these other movies. Thor, to a certain extent, has that same kind of thing too, even though the newest movie totally trashed that. Even the Black Panther, but the Ant-Man films, the first two kind of have that going, and this third film does not feel like it was like it doesn't feel like a completion to that trilogy. It feels like an opening act for something else, but I still got some enjoyment out of it. So Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is number 3. Now number 2 is Ant-Man. I thought Ant-Man was a fine film. It was a good introduction into the Ant-Man superhero character. It was fun. I actually liked the action in it. I liked the story. I thought it was actually pretty funny. I thought the way that the presentation of the expanded world when someone's shrunken, how it sounds, how it looks, how it feels, definitely was captured, and just how creative they got with it in terms of the fight sequences between Yellow Jacket, Ant-Man and Falcon. Just ultimately, it was a great experience, and that film got me interested in the Ant-Man character. So definitely number 2 will be the first Ant-Man film, and coming in at number 1, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, reason why I like Ant-Man and the Wasp, because I think what it doesn't necessarily become a better film, but it is a good continuation. And a lot of the things that I like about the first film, even the story itself, I actually didn't mind the story. A little weird, but I didn't really mind the story. I like the bad guys that weren't too over the top. I think the bad guys were actually interesting. I liked them. I don't think because it did a good job of not escalating in a crazy way. Which usually when you watch superhero films, the villains escalate as the films continue on. But I felt like they were a bit grounded. The fights were actually pretty good. The action was actually pretty good. They managed to introduce a new character. We actually got to see the Wasp in the film do the exact same thing Ant-Man did, but from a different perspective. So it was refreshed seeing the whole shrinking of the world and utilizing the fight sequences in the film and what she could do and how they contrast. Because ultimately, Ant-Man and the Wasp was a good continuation and a good sequel of the Ant-Man franchise that did a lot of what I loved about the first film, and giving some of that to other characters, as well as the presentation story and a pretty cool and sexy a bad guy Ghost. So in the comment section below, guys, rank the films. Which one's the worst? Which one's the best? You already seen mine. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Well, it looks like we are out of time. So guys, in the comment section below, let us know what you thought about the MCU's Ant-Man film series. Join in on the discussion. What are your top 10? Who are your top 10 favorite characters? What are your top 10 favorite moments? How would you rank the villains? How do you rank the fights? How do you rank the movies? Join us again next Friday for another Streamline podcast. Be sure to hit that like, share, subscribe, and that notification button to get the best of what we got going on this channel. And we'll definitely catch you guys later.